whereas rheumatoid arthritis, you know, really destroys the joints. So it's not quite the same. That doesn't mean that MAP's not involved, but we would need to do some specifically targeted research to find out whether it would be in a proportion of people with rheumatoid or not.
The question is coming from the idea that Remicade, for instance, is used in arthritis, Humira is in arthritis, and it was the thought, casually the same medicines which are, let's say, anti-inflammatory medicines actually are operating in both types of diseases. So that's why we thought also on arthritis rheumatoid.
Yes, there are actually some interesting and important differences in responses to treatment, for example, between Crohn's and rheumatoid arthritis. We know that both diseases may respond to infliximab and Humira,
yes,
which are the same really. They bind to this molecule which is a messenger for inflammation called TNF,
yes,
and they can make both people with both diseases or either disease better some of the time. But other anti-inflammatory treatments, such as, for example, using a false TNF receptor, can make rheumatoid arthritis better, but not Crohn's disease. And this suggests that the inflammatory mechanisms in the two diseases are not the same.
Now another question which is, let's say, making people nervous. They are a bit concerned about the possible appearing of different types of cancer, leukemia, dysplasia, what they say also, so strange blood illness related to always to our M.A.P and our disease. So is there more chance to have cancer? Is there more chance to have leukemia? Is there more, or is this coming from the treatments, or is this coming really from our, let's say, disease? That's the question.
It's very difficult to answer that, isn't it? Because, you know, is it the treatment? And we know that there are some treatments that have been used in Crohn's disease, which are associated statistically, you need large numbers of people to show it, with a higher risk of lymphoma, for example.
Yes.
And there are other evidence which shows that some cancers, particularly rare cancers of the small intestine, may be more common in people with Crohn's disease. But by and large, the M.A.P infection is not like the Helicobacter infection of the stomach, which causes ulcers. There, the Helicobacter infection is known to be a very high risk of increasing of stomach cancer, where the M.A.P infection has no such easily demonstrable risk associated with it.
The next question is, in Bilbao there has been somebody who was talking about the relation between our problem, Crohn's disease, and he's talking that there is a relation also with diabetes type 1. Is there something like that?
It's really far too early in the research process to be able to say that. There is some preliminary evidence that M.A.P infection is more common in people with diabetes. And we know that diabetes is more common in people with Crohn's disease. And diabetes and indeed pancreatitis, inflammation of the pancreas gland. But it may be the case, everybody knows that people with diabetes are less resistant to infection, and it may be just a consequence of the diabetes. So it is a possibility, but there's a lot of research needed to be done before it can be said whether it is a trigger of diabetes or can be a trigger of diabetes, or whether it's not.
Now another question, let's say 2 questions in one. This is more or less related to our entire neurological system. If MAP is attacking our neura in the gut, the question is first, is it also attacking other neurological systems? Second place, is it provoking stress? Is at the same time the stress provoking, let's say, a cell-destroying protein? And on the other hand, I'm sometimes fearing that we are reacting out of proportion. Is to say, we are reacting in some strange way, answering very aggressive, or we are, let's say, less patient than other people. So is our behavior also related with all this?
Well, these are good questions, and they, of course, been thought of by people with Crohn's disease for a long time. We can say some things quite clearly. We know MAP can damage nerves. MAP infection can, MAP disease can. It does so in animals by inflaming the nerves of the gut, delicate nerves that permeate all the little microscopical structures of the gut. And these are damaged in animals with Johne's disease. And in Crohn's disease and irritable bowel syndrome, both have damaged and inflamed nerves of the gut. And this is associated with MAP infection in each case. So we know that MAP is what doctors would call neuropathogenic. That means it damages nerves. Now then, we know, for example, that leprosy damages nerves. But the kind of nerves that are damaged in leprosy are different from the ones that MAP damages. MAP damages nerves that are not insulated. If you think of an electric wire, it's normally insulated. But there are forms of nerves in humans which are not insulated, and MAP particularly damages those. Now, does it MAP involve the central nervous system? We really have no direct laboratory-based evidence of MAP infection of the central nervous system. We need much more work, it has to be said. I so often say this, but we need much more research in animals and indeed in humans to see whether MAP can attack the brain or spinal cord. We have to look epidemiologically for evidence. There was a time when it was thought that Crohn's disease was linked also to multiple sclerosis. It's known that ulcerative colitis is linked to multiple sclerosis, and the evidence is a little conflicting in Crohn's disease. My own view is that there is probably a relationship, but it's probably very small, between Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. Stress. MAP can live in animals, for example, for years and not cause clinical Johne's disease. If you stress the animals, they can come down with clinical Johne's disease. It's almost certainly the case in humans. Stress can precipitate Crohn's disease, where the MAP infection probably has been there for years beforehand. Whether MAP has anything to do with our behavior in Crohn's disease and makes us more irritable and short-tempered, it's very difficult to say, because if you've been ill for a long time, of course you tend to get irritable and short-tempered from time to time. So it's difficult to tell whether it's cause or consequence. I have sometimes imagined that MAP infection involving the central nervous system might alter people's behavior on some occasions, but that is just speculation.